No way, Jose.
The following footage proves beyond any doubt that the tanks intentionally set the house on fire. It proves that the Branch Davidians were murdered. You can see that this tank has a gas jet on the front that shoots fire. You can also see the fire quite plainly. The tank goes into the house twice, and each time as it backs out, the fire at the gas jets is plainly visible.
We must all do more to recognize and look for the early warning signals that deeply troubled young people send.
Good morning. This is the No Way Jose podcast. You are watching The Morning Dump, and I am Jose Galison, coming to you today on this, a little chilly morning today, Friday, January 17th. Just checking the chat. Morning, fellas. Good morning, Eddie Grimm. How are you doing? Good morning, Bobo McCua. Good morning, Redbeard, New Hampshire. A pleasure to be here with you, fellas. Good to see you all here. If you guys are here, if you're coming over, one of the people who came over Twitter, do me a solid and please go retweet that or like that promo, because I don't know what's going on with Twitter. Makes no fucking sense that 10,000 followers and it would get literally one like for an hour that's out. Algo's fucking me, so help a brother out. Get that promotion out here. But either way, you're here, so I got you here. So that's all that matters. I'm joined by you guys today. It's a little bit of a slow news today. I told you guys yesterday about the Gaiman story, so I did read up on that today, so we will go through that a little bit. It's pretty wild story, the whole Gaiman thing, which for those who aren't aware of who Gaiman is, Neil Gaiman, he's probably one of the more famous authors of, I don't know, the past decade or so, I guess. I think Angels was the show that there's a few shows out there. There's American Gods, there's Sandman, there was a Netflix special for that. They have another one coming out, but he's done a lot of really good books, and honestly he's actually one of my top 5 favorite authors, so like that's part of what stuck out with this story for me. So kind of wild that there's some craziness. He essentially got Me Too'd, and with that some information came out about his past that's pretty wild, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, we have some ins and outs to go through, you guys. So we got Jay Brooks saying good morning, Niggs. Good morning, Jay Brooks. I do remind you guys, if you do feel so inclined, you can support me by sending over a Rumble rant over on Rumble. That is not an option on YouTube because I got demonetized a long time ago. All right, guys. Well, while we wait for the rest of y'all to start showing up, start rolling in, the people who got the news. Oh shit, we're doing a stream today. I do want to remind you guys that today's episode was brought to you by Nado Shave Co. If you're tired of that razor burn irritation and those ingrown hairs caused by those deep penetrating multi-blade cartridges, then this is the way to go. You don't need expensive nonsense. You can shave just like your grandpa used to. Whether you're shaving your whole face or just edging up your beard, the single blades give you a barber-grade shave for a fraction of the price. The standard issue gives you the one traditional safety razor and a box of 100 stainless steel razor blades. That puts you out about $75, the estimate being that it'll last you for a year. Let's be real, though, probably last you a good deal longer. I've barely put a dent in mine. I've probably not even hit a quarter of mine. I've had them probably over a year. So it really depends on how frequently you shave. But if you're someone who shaves on the regular, you may want to consider the Quarter Shave Club. That'll put you out about 25 cents per replacement blade. He's also got shave soaps. He's also got 3-in-1 body, hair, and face soap. Highly recommend those. Feel great, smell great. It's a better product. It's a cheaper product. It's a COVID mandate refusing company, as well as company was born out of refusing the COVID mandate. So it's a cheaper product, better product. Company supports your values. Doesn't hate you. Doesn't want you dead. It's a no-brainer. Use code Jose at checkout for 10% off your entire order. The only reason I could see why you wouldn't buy this product is if you're someone who doesn't shave and you don't know anyone who shaves, so and you don't want to give any gifts. So otherwise, you're a silly goose for not buying this product. But all right, let's go ahead and let's check in the chat real quick before we get into it. NMC raid, yes, that is true. I saw Nephilim Murder Crew raided the chat. Thank you for that. Maybe one of these days I'll be one of the cool kids who knows how to do that. I have no idea how to do that. And maybe I'll start raiding other streams. But till then, I'm just gonna shoot the bull with y'all. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into some content for today. Let's start off with, as the title promised, it says Israel, Gaza, peace deal, fallout. Well, I mean, I don't really have much on the actual specifics of the peace deal. I mean, I think there's some little itty bits here and there, but they're dragging their feet. That's where we're at right now. But we did have yesterday some interesting things on this front, which I feel like it falls under the peace deal fallout. Is Anthony Blinken had his last what do you call those get-togethers? His last peace, his last I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Press conference? I guess, yeah, that's probably the word I'm looking for. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. But yeah, he had his last press conference, and it got a little spicy. There was a few notable things that happened there. Let's go ahead and get into that. If I can find the fucking... One second. One second, I gotta find the fucking... There we go. Let's start here. Sam Husseini was one of the first ones. He actually got dragged out of the conference. This is from Dave DeCamp. Gray Zone reporter Max Blumenthal also confronted Blinken, which we have a video we'll play of that, and we'll play the Sam Husseini one. These are just like, there's not like, I guess, anything like too meaningful over here, other than it just is cool to see the some members of the press actually actually do something, actually hold these guys to account, make them feel uncomfortable. But yeah, let's go ahead and read this. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held his final press conference on Thursday and was confronted about his support for Israel's genocidal war in Gaza by two veteran reporters, including independent journalist Sam Husseini, who was dragged out of the room while telling Blinken he belonged in The Hague. Max Blumenthal, founder of the Gray Zone, disrupted Blinken's opening statement, saying 300 reporters in Gaza were on the receiving end of your bombs. Why did you keep the bombs flowing when we had a deal in May? Why did you sacrifice the rules-based order on the mantle of your commitment to Zionism? Why did you allow my friends to be massacred? Blumenthal continued to pepper Blinken with questions as he was escorted out of the room. Are you compromised by Israel? Why did you allow the Holocaust of our time to happen? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? Now, I guess we'll go and play it here, actually. We'll play Max Blumenthal's statement to this fucking, blood-soaked monster.
300 reporters in Gaza were on the receiving end of your bombs. Why did you keep the bombs flowing when we had a deal in May? We all knew we had a deal. Everyone in this room knows we had a deal, Tony, and you kept the bombs flowing. Why did you sacrifice the rules-based order on the mantle of your commitment to Zionism? Why did you allow my friends to be massacred? Why did you allow my friends' homes in Gaza to be destroyed when we had a deal in May? You helped destroy our religion, Judaism, by associating it with fascism. You waved the white flag before Netanyahu.
We'll have the time to take questions at the end.
You waved the white flag before Israeli fascism.
We'll have the time to take questions
Your
at the end.
Your father-in-law was an Israel lobbyist. Your grandfather was an Israel lobbyist. Are you compromised by Israel? Why did you allow the Holocaust of our time to happen? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? You too, Matt. You smirked through the whole thing every day. You smirked through a genocide.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff from Max. I am appreciative of that. I mean, it does feel a little bit obnoxious, so it is kind of hard to get it. But you know what? At the same time, it's like, fuck these people. They should feel gross. And I will say, I think we might read this in the article in a second. But I'm pretty sure they were actually not allowed to, at the very least, Husseini. I don't know about Blumenthal. I will say Husseini, he had already essentially received word he wasn't going to be allowed to ask questions. So that makes it a little bit more reasonable to me because, I don't know, you'd think you just at least wait to your turn to ask the question if you're going to be able to ask questions and then do this instead of, interrupting while they're talking because it just seems a little... I don't know, it seems to be like more effective for one, and then also like it just seems kind of shitty to like interrupt. But if you're already knowing you're not gonna be able to ask questions, that's a little bit of a different story, and that makes more sense to react in this way. Referring to State Department spokesman Matt Miller, Blumenthal said, "You too, Matt. You smirk through the whole thing. Every day you smirk through a genocide. And yeah, he does have like an evil little fucking smirking impish face. A few minutes after Blumenthal left, Husseini began asking Blinken questions. I'm a journalist, not a potted plant, Husseini told a State Department employee, told him to be quiet. Okay, Husseini began asking questions after. Blinken said he would answer questions after his statement, but Husseini said that Miller explicitly told him that he wouldn't have the chance to ask questions. Who Miller is that one? I'll show you right here. You can see this little fucking ghoul for a split second. If you look right here, this fucking ghoul, that guy right here. I forget exactly what his title is, but he's like kind of one of the press conference guys or whatever the fuck. The secretary. It says right there, secretary. So it's the Blinken's press secretary, I believe. I don't believe that's the White House press secretary. That's Blinken's. But either way, yeah, there's that fucking ghoul. He's always smiling, which, I don't know, I guess I do that too. But, I don't know. Fuck this guy. So I'll point it out with him. I'm also not fucking cheerleading on a genocidal regime. So I feel like I get a pass for fucking inappropriately smiling when I shouldn't during emotional times where you shouldn't be. Because I am that guy. But I'm generally not on the side of the bad guys. So there you go. All right, there you go. Blinken said he would answer questions after a statement, but there you go. I already told you. Miller said he wouldn't allow him to ask questions. So that's where I'm like, okay, from a certain like whether this is just like fucking cringe or cool or whatever. That does factor in because it is like, yeah, apparently, assuming that he's being truthful, which I would kind of lean towards Husseini over that fucking ghoul I just showed you above. Apparently he wasn't going to be allowed to ask questions. So like, otherwise, what's the fucking point of him being there other than to give some sort of like implied consent of some sort, essentially to the elite. That way you can just sit there and be quiet, don't ask any of your questions, and just get to be one more person sitting there as appear to the outside world, appearing as just another nodding head. And no, he chose not to, and good for him. All right, keep going. Now this is Husseini, so this is him getting dragged out. This is pretty dope too.
I carry in my pocket the names of those who have been arbitrarily detained and unfairly held hostage, unjustly held hostage, and bringing them home, returning them to their families, returning them to their loved ones. Finally,
get your hands off me! 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 Answer a damn question.
I look
Do you know
forward to
about the
asking
handful
questions.
directive?
I don't know this man.
You know about Israel's nuclear weapons? Everybody from the ICJ.
That's my purse. I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that. It's actually pretty. It just reminded me of that fucking. Okay, all right. This is what I'm talking about. I make inappropriate comments and make light of things when I shouldn't. He's actually being pretty heroic here. I just couldn't help notice that it reminded me of Bobby Hill. I don't know this man. That's my purse. or I forget what the bit even is, but anyways, let's
play. A damn question.
You
know about the handful directive? You know about Israel's nuclear weapons? Everybody from the ICJ. I was sitting here quietly, and now I'm being manhandled by 2 or 3 people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I'm asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions until I ask him questions.
Respect the process.
Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please respect the process.
Oh, respect the process. Respect this process while everybody from Amnesty International. From Amnesty International to the ICJ saying that Israel's doing genocide and extermination. You're telling me to respect the process. Criminals, why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague?
All right, it's pretty cool. Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? I want that. And you know what? Laney or whoever ends up doing like any intros or edits of me in the future, I need that. Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? I don't know, something about that just hits. That's dope. If I wish we would see more of this more often. This is, man telling truth to power, telling him, this guy should be charged with war crimes, and he's letting the world know. But all right, let's keep going. I'm justified in what I'm doing, Husseini said. After a moment of calm, armed security personnel approached him and began ripping out his seat, as you guys saw. As he's being dragged out, Husseini said to Blinken, answer a damn question. Do you know about the Hannibal Directive? Do you know about Israel's nuclear weapons? You pontificate about a free press. It is pretty dope that he's dropping these, because these are both of these are things that are, like, I'm pretty sure not officially recognized by our government. So these are things that, like, the nice polite little press boys don't ever mention these things, because these are these are the dirty little secrets that we all know but we don't admit to. Israel has nuclear weapons, but the rest of the world is in this thing where they like to pretend that they don't, even though fucking everyone knows they do. And it's kind of somewhat the same thing with the Hannibal Directive. It's probably a little bit lesser known than whether Israel has nukes or not, but either way, another one of those things not officially recognized by our government. So him kind of dropping those as he's getting pulled out, great stuff. Blinken told Husseini to respect the process, which is, which, as I referenced earlier, this is why it's kind of important. While I do think the whole respect the process is kind of gay, I guess if you are given like an opportunity to be like, we're taking questions at this point in time, I don't know why, like, that's going to be the more effective time. I guess, if you interrupt someone, you might be able to be more, poppy, but it's going to tend to be less constructive. At least you can show you tried to have an actual genuine intercourse, like a back and forth, if you wait for the question time. But he wasn't being able to, so the whole respect the process is actually kind of a farce. This is, to be fair to Blinken, although I don't really care about being fair to Blinken particularly, I guess he may not have known that what the deal is with the questions. Maybe Miller is the one kind of handling that, saying making those calls without telling Blinken the deal about who gets to take questions or whether they're taking questions or that sort of thing. So to be fair to him, he may not have known when he said that, but it is a little bit Orwellian to be like, respect the process if you're not giving that person an opportunity to engage in the process. All right, he says, respect the process. Well, everybody from Amnesty International to the ICJ says Israel's doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal. Why aren't you in The Hague? After the incident, Husseini said he made it home. I wasn't seriously manhandled, but I'm back home. Thanks for all the support, folks, he said. He listed the questions that he wanted to ask Blinken, which included what was the point of the May 31st announcement to block implementation of the May 24th ICJ order, which the ICJ order, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe that was the one that was the arrest warrant for Netanyahu. So that, and we essentially got in the way of it. Why do you refuse to recognize or maybe that was the genocide calling? I don't know. Either way, that's us sticking our hand in the pot, trying to prevent Israel from taking any sort of accountability, which is all too common of a thing for us to do. Why do you refuse to recognize the Geneva Conventions as applying to Gaza? Then he also said to everyone from Amnesty International, ICC, accuses Israel of extermination and genocide. Why are you not in The Hague? Why was your stepfather Pissar connected to both Robert Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein? Apparently, I've seen. I need to find. I saw a thread and it escaped me. I probably ought to find it, try to hunt it down later. But I saw something that was talking about Blinken being childhood friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. So wild. Small world up in those little elite circles. Miller here pretends not to know about the Hannibal Directive. Do you know about the Hannibal Directive? Why do you not even acknowledge Israel's nuclear weapons? And he's written extensively about it on his Substack. So you guys go check out Husseini's Substack if his performance here impressed you. All right, let's check in the chat. And then I think I have one more heckler. So yeah, we got some people popping in. Everyone say, oh, hi, Firepix is in here. What's up, Firepix? You got Jay Brooks saying they're going to get their hostages they want and turn around and immediately level the rest of Gaza that's left. Well, here's the thing. I don't even think they give a shit about the hostages. They have not really given a flying fuck. That's literally just a rhetorical, rhetorical trick. Essentially, is the hostages. Like that's their go-to. That's their flag of indignation is the hostages. That's what that is. I don't think they really give a shit. So I don't know how much that really factors in it. I think it's far more likely it's a matter of that probably getting pressure from Trump. And, far be it from me to be a Trump stan. You guys know me. I was pretty sour on him considering the Israel stuff recently. So I don't know. This still could fall all apart. So we don't know. But, yeah, they're going to, I mean, now the idea that they're going to get their hostages, so I don't really feel like this is motivated by the hostages, but that might not be the point of your comment particularly. Now, I guess you're more getting at that they're gonna kind of maybe just do this to kind of like play along with Trump or whatever, kind of like, oh look, we did what you want, and now we're back at it. I wouldn't be surprised. You may not be wrong, but here's the thing, and not an original idea. Some Dave DeCamp said multiple times. It's like just this slowing down, the stopping. Will kind of just makes it harder to get it going again. It's kind of the idea of like things in motion tend to stay in motion. So the idea that there may even be a stop, I think, is a positive development. It makes it so there's more likely to be future stops and more likely for this stop to stay longer. And the longer that it stops, the longer it's likely to stay, if that makes sense. Like an object at rest is likely to stay at rest. So hopefully, maybe just it's chilling out. Maybe, yeah, I'm sure there is like this, like in their head, they're like, well, we're going to come back. But you know what? That might buy the world stage just enough time to start kind of framing them in politically and kind of PR wise to where it's just really not going to happen. And even just delaying that could make a huge deal. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. You're probably closer to right than not right. So, kind of my feel, but I'm just, kind of just being optimistic. Hopefully this is really the only, we've gone a long period of time where there was no optimism to be had. They're just basically just being mowed down over there. So, I don't know, it's something. We'll see. But yeah, that is a likely. I just think it may not be as politically expedient for them to do this, especially since once there's less hostages. I mean, I don't know how many hostages they even have, or if this is going to be a situation where like they are able to be like, you have all your hostages. Let's say they do get all their hostages. Is that now they don't have that. Now they don't have that card to go, they have our hostages. I think that may make it harder for them to do this. So, and also, I mean, as we just showed these journalists. I mean, not that I think. I just don't know how even on our side of things how Israel would gear this back up and how just from a PR side on the American side of things, how that would unfold again. If then it just feels like it'd be more blatant if there's been a long pause and then they just start back up again. It's like, especially after getting hostages, I don't know, does that actually mean that translates in them getting less aid from us, or maybe even just the idea of the aid even being in question? Maybe I don't it's really just kind of grasping at straws as something to kind of help with situations when it seems like I don't know. I mean, we're at a weird spot where it comes to, in my opinion, when it comes to like Israeli control and stuff, that I don't know, we're at a weird kind of tipping point where I think there are openings for essentially people who do believe in not fucking murdering innocent people. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we'll see going forward. I hope people stop dying. Really, at the end of the day, I mean, I know it's funny because all of the Israel people are always been like, why aren't you calling on them to return the hostages and this and that? And I'm like, I hope they do that. I hope Israel stops attacking them, and I hope Hamas stops doing it. It's just a matter of like what's realistic. Also, to what extent do we actually have any sort of like? I'm not supporting Hamas financially. Aside to the extent that my money goes to Israel, that then goes to them. But now my money is supporting Israel. So I have, in a certain sense, in an abstract sense, a little bit more power over that money, and a little bit more of an ability, and a little bit more responsibility to say something about that. But I'm not particularly paying for Hamas anything or other, whether that be through taxation, which is theft anyways, or anything. So I don't know. Anyways, I'm rambling. Hard for me to believe this isn't all manufactured from Nephilim murder crew. Yeah, you pontificate. Yeah, to the Hague. If you're going to stream during a press conference, at least say something funnier in Semitic. Yeah. I'm just looking through this. That's my purse. Best quote from King of the Hill. Yes. No, that shit is crazy. He's friends with Maxwell. Yeah, it is weird, right? Violence. Okay. Be sure to like the video, guys. That's from Jules. Go check out Great Pill Podcast, guys. For sure. He's a dude. He says, I know I don't give a shit about it. Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely frank. I don't really, I mean, I mean, I do, and I don't. I mean, like, even in a certain sense, like, these are all abstractions. I don't really know anything about these people. I don't want people to die, but the biggest thing is that they're taking my money to kill people, and I'm not really happy about it. Now, if my money wasn't involved and people were just being killed somewhere, it's a bummer. But it's like, and so in a certain sense, it's like, I mean, and I guess I sort of give a shit, but in a real way, it's like, if I had nothing to do with this thing whatsoever, my money wasn't involved, it was just X group fighting Y group over in Z country, I don't give a fuck. Like, so really, like, if that was what this thing was, that's all there'd be to it. I mean, like, I care to the extent that I'm like, well, it's a bummer. I wish people weren't dying, but it's like, I mean, people die. This is the world. It's a big world. People die. People are dying all over the place. But, you know, only so many people are dying that I have something to do with, and this is one of them. Doctor says, I don't care about the Middle East at all. Yeah, exactly. Screwed Up Rebellion says there were never any hostages. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe there are no hostages, but it's more of that that's what they use to justify, and the rest of the world believes there is, so they are hostages or not. Doesn't change much. I mean, that would be a funny op for them to pull. Kind of fucked up as if if there was no hostages to begin with, if somehow they executed that op. I don't know how they would fake that, but that would be a fun op to play. That way they can keep, obviously going, oh my God, they won't return the hostages. And I'm like, what fucking hostages? We don't have any air hostages. Dr. 420 says the CIA secured the route for the Turkey-Qatar pipeline. The war is over. Perhaps, maybe you're right. I don't know. Now, Greater Israel Project isn't in full swing. But I don't know. Maybe they'll try back for it again later. I'm not sure. And then one day, for no reason at all, Hamas attacked Israel. Yeah, I mean, while that is a joke, it is true. It is like, you think about it. Why are these people attacking over there? They have their reasons. All right, let's. There's one more heckle we'll check out before we get out and we move on. This isn't really. I mean, this is kind of in the same thing. It's not from the same press conference, but it's kind of in the same vein, I guess. I wanted to play this. This isn't one that I feel like maybe is probably a little bit more along the lines of what I was kind of saying before, of like just kind of cringe. But let's go ahead and play this.
Officers enlisted, black and white. Young.
Oh, little for those listening. This is it says during his open statement, Pete Hegseth is interrupted by a heckler. He calls him a misogynist and a Christian Zionist. But there you go. All right,
young and old, men and women, all Americans, all warriors. This hearing is for you. Thank you for figuratively and literally having my back.
Something about this guy's voice is goofy. Listen to this guy. Gaza. You are a Christian Zionist. Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
I want to thank the authorities for their swift reaction to that outburst and state that similar interruptions will be treated.
Now, I will put that one more on the side of a little bit gay. Now, I will say he's probably right. I'm pretty sure he is right, actually, about the Christian Zionist thing. I haven't looked enough into Pete Hegseth. I know a lot of people are torn on him, on where he's going to be. He does seem to be pretty resolutely pro-Israel. I mean, he's also said things along the lines of being Christian Zionist and the like. So, but whatever, that's nothing that's really all that surprising. I mean, he does seem to be pretty gung-ho about it. So, I mean, it's a little bit worrisome, but I don't know. Either way, that one does seem a little bit gayer, especially the misogynist thing. If he'd not had the misogynist thing in there, I might have giggled at his voice, but I probably would have took him a little bit more seriously. But the misogynist really is like throws it off. You're like, oh, okay, this guy doesn't like chicks. Oh, okay, all right, cool story, faggot. That's kind of the feeling I get after that. But now, if he just stuck with Christian Zionists, he would have stuck the landing for me. I would have been like, yeah, maybe not the best delivery, but hey. You're fighting the good fight. This made it fighting the good fight, but a little gay. All right, let's check back in the chat, see what you guys have to say. All right, man. So, the FBI shut down the DEI. Somebody's saying, yeah, you are a Christian Zionist. All right, yeah. All right, let's check in. All right, let's go. All right. Well, I guess now we can probably move on to the Neil Gaiman story. I don't know if I want to go ahead and get right into that. Fuck it. Let's go ahead and get right into the Neil Gaiman story. This right here. Here we go. Now, this right here, there was a recent expose on Gaiman. We're not going to read this whole thing because this thing is huge. I just kind of got it up as a visual aid, just kind of remind me. A lot happened in this. All right, here's Neil Gaiman. As I mentioned earlier, famous author, comic book author, also, author. I believe he also did a little bit of journalism. But yeah, apparently he has a crazy background. He just got busted for Me Too type stuff. Pretty wild. It's also an interesting one where it is like, I mean, this could get pretty big later. I don't know, because the Me Too's here are very, how do I put this, very questionable. And I don't mean this in a sense that say I'm like questioning their stories. I mean that they blur the lines of what is consent and what isn't. So that's why, like, I think this one might be interesting to keep an eye on going forward. I don't know how this may play out. This may just completely fall apart. The broads trying to crucify this dude. Nothing may come of it. I don't know. I don't even know if there's like criminal or anything. I forget the specifics, if it's like civil or if it's just like a court of public opinion type thing. But yeah, this guy, it's looking pretty wild for him, looking rough for him. Doesn't seem to actually be affecting his career at all, which I'll be honest, I'm a little torn on because I love his books. I've read a ton of them. I read American Gods. I read his Anansi Boys. I've read a bunch of his comic books as well. He's a really great comic book writer. I did the Sandman. I've read all of his Sandman books. I mean, I've read a bunch of his stuff. He's a great writer. So he's, which I guess checks out. So many of these great, phenomenal writers are weird. Another one of my favorite writers is Alan Moore, and he's a fucking weird commie. So I don't know. I mean, that's just the nature of being a super duper good in whatever your given art is, I guess. But either way, yes, this guy got Me Too. It recently got covered by Leela Shapiro over at the New York Magazine. Yes, this is the title. There's no safe word. Essentially, it's kind of implied there's been a bunch of women who have kind of shown up in Neil Gaiman's life. And he's essentially very, 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 very much blurred the lines of what consent is. Essentially, women that he would kind of enter into long relationships with, but then he would kind of just, how do I put this, take them and then not take no for an answer in these relationships. Now it becomes questionable because a lot of them obviously keep returning. But then even then on top of that, there's a lot of weirdness in the sense that there is, while I hate this whole like, oh, there's a power dynamic, they're one of the women, I believe, he literally, before he even engaged into a relationship with her, I don't remember why, he had essentially put her up in a house. So she was living in one of his house for a long period of time, going through some stuff, then essentially started, essentially banging. And then I think it got a little bit more sinister, and then I believe even supposedly, allegedly said something along the lines of kind of like, we've got a pretty good arrangement here, like I take care of you, you take care of me type thing, which, I mean, to some extent it's like, okay, I mean, you're getting a free house, I guess, whatever. I mean, it sounds awful, but it's like, all right, you knew the deal here. But I know my point being is it's very much questionable. And this is even for me, like a lot of these, I'm like, I don't know where to fall. Do I fall on that, like, hey, what did you expect? Some multi-millionaire author and you're some fucking 20-year-old. What did you expect? Like, but I mean, it's happened a ton. Happened during his relationship. There's also stuff with his wife. But the biggest thing, for me particularly, that came out of this was the connections with Scientology, which is weird. So I don't know. I'll just kind of go through this. This thing is paywalled. I found the non-paywall one, so I feel a little bit bad showing it here, but whatever. I'm just kind of using to remind me. Kind of scrolling through it and kind of looking through all here. This was mostly told from the perspective of one of the girls that he did this to, Pavlovich. So she initially was like essentially smashing his wife, and his wife essentially brought her around. And I guess they were separate at the time, but they've kind of always had this like weird open relationship, I guess. So, and living in different houses a lot of times, living together at other times. I mean, I think that their relationship did finally fall apart when she did try to then close the relationship, and he just couldn't, essentially just couldn't. So anyways, yes, his wife, his name is Palmer, is her name Amanda Palmer, where she's like a performer of some sort of weird performer, does a lot of weird like music and this and that. So she essentially got this Palmer chick initially. I guess she's also got her to like kind of hire her to start helping take care of the kids, stuff along those lines. They also make a lot of commentary about how essentially it seems like Gaiman was kind of blurring the lines with his fans, is what a lot of this it comes down to. All right, I'm scrolling. I'm just scrolling through all these, just trying to jog my memory. Oh yeah, Coraline. I totally forgot Coraline's. Oh, that's a great book. Although it becomes a little bit sinister because one of actually, funny enough, the one I was talking about, the one that he put up in a house, that their girl's name was Caroline. So Coraline, Caroline. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying there necessarily is a connection there. So it's weird, especially if you've read Coraline. Coraline is definitely more of a child's book. And it was, I believe, even the forward, I think he dedicated it to like one of his kids, I believe his daughter, or something like that. So a little weird. That then later that's the same name. I don't know. Completely could just be coincidence, but whatever. Sorry, I just saw the Coraline one, reminded me of that. I'm trying to. Oh yeah, the first time. Here you go. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So this is the the Pavlovich girl. This is the one that his wife initially essentially smashed, and then kind of brought them into their circle essentially. And she started, I believe, kind of, as I mentioned, would watch the kids occasionally. But apparently there was one situation, and this was actually, I guess, fairly recently. This is when he was 61. So I'm not exactly sure what year this is, but it's fairly recently-ish. So while he's still older, essentially he said something, somehow managed to convince her to go essentially they had a long chat, they started talking, and he goes, I've had a thought, why don't you take a bath in the beautiful clogged bathtub in the garden, it's enchanting. And apparently she was weird, was kind of like, no, but I guess he kind of insisted, so eventually she did. He said he needed to go make a work call. And he didn't want her to be bored, so he's kind of like, the idea was like, oh, this is what you can go do while I go do that. And so he has a claw bathtub that he has set up in the middle of his garden, which is kind of a cool idea. I like that. That's a cool idea. Like having if you have a really nice, beautiful flower garden, having a claw bathtub in the middle of it. I mean, if I was had a ton of money and a ton of land so nobody could see into my property, that would be great. I'd love to do that. But apparently he managed to talk her into it. She got into it, and then a few minutes later he comes back, and then hops in. I guess he was naked. Hops into the bath with her, puts out candles, all that stuff. He starts just kind of shooting the bull with her, talking about his kid's school, and just short, just kind of small talk, like nothing was going on. I told her to get comfortable, blah blah blah. Tells her not to ruin the moment. Then he starts rubbing her feet at one point. So he tells her to sit in her lap. Then I guess she says that she immediately is like, I'm gay, I've never had sex. That she was abused when she was a kid, blah blah blah. And then she says the next part is really amorphous, is what she says right here. But I can tell you that he put his finger straight into my ass and tried to put his what in what I just said. And she said, no. Then he tried to rub his thing on her chest. He said no as well. Then he asked if he could, on my face. And I said no, but he did anyways. He called me master, and he said, call me master and I'll come. He said, be a good girl. You're a good little girl. Now it is hard, like that right there. I mean, this is kind of probably the most vanilla of all the examples throughout this story. The story is very long. But this is probably the most vanilla of them. And this is where you're kind of like, I don't know. Obviously, it is kind of creepy. Obviously, all this is creepy. She's kind of clearly been no, felt uncomfortable, made multiple things. And he clearly just kept pressing forward. So weird, but she did kind of let him, do it. But this is just one example. And she did also there were messages and stuff too later where they're it does muddy the water of whether it's legit or not. Now I think you will see in a bit where it gets a little bit more sinister, and you get to understand maybe how some of these women are basically how do I put this? It almost seems like they're doing stuff they don't really want to do, and maybe there's something to that. All right. I'm trying to scroll through these to find the interesting stuff. They're talking about Sandman here, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Let me see. Sorry, guys. I had to, sorry this isn't as well prepared. I had to read through all of this. This is a long piece I read yesterday, this morning, and I was literally finishing up right before, so I didn't get to, nicely, go through and be like, oh, yeah, this paragraph, that paragraph, this paragraph. So let me see. Oh, here's one that's kind of interesting. So this is, let me see. This is one woman named Brenda. Everyone want to be near him. That's what she's saying. As soon as they began to hook up, the feeling that had drawn her to him, the magical spell of his interest in her individuality, vanished. He seemed to have a script, she tells me. He wanted me to call him master immediately. He demanded that she promise him her soul. It was like he'd gone to this ritual that had nothing to do with me. So yeah, this is him smashing fans. It also is weird. The that ritual thing, which will kind of build on this in a little bit. All right, here's more. I guess 2 women accused him of a sexual assault back in July. These women have shared their things. They're on a podcast, I guess. I have not checked out that podcast. It's called Master. So I don't know, feel free to check that out. You guys let me know your thoughts if it seems legit to me. But I mean, I've read through this, and some of the accounts are pretty fucking horrifying. So, but even then, even all of them still kind of hang out in this questionable area. All right. Most of the women were in his 20s. The youngest was 18. So, I mean, that is also, I find that creepy and concerning. This dude is in his 60s, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, this is legal, but this is weird that he seems to be attracted to very, very young, waif type looking broads. I mean, he seems to have a type. Very young, very modelly. Very weird. 5 were his fans. There was an allegation of forcible kissing in 1986. All right, yeah. There's a lot of psychoanalyzing this too, where people looking at his work and being like, oh, this or that. And I don't know, I find that to be, maybe reading a little bit more into it than that. Oh, here is this the Karen? Oh, this is Kendall. He had no. Oh, here's another one. Here's a girl that he said he struck up a flirtatious correspondence. She said she straight up told him she didn't want to have sex with him. So it was so this is a 22-year-old fan who was really into his work. He's like a 60-year-old dude. She just wanted to be friends with him, according to him, which is kind of believable if you find someone who's your favorite author. It doesn't mean you necessarily want to fuck them, especially if they're an old dude, but you might be like, oh, that's cool. You've had all these great books that I like. You apparently are such a deep thinker and have all these different concepts and themes going up in your head. So it is I can understand why you'd be like, I'd love to talk to this person. Part of me is I would like to talk to this guy. After reading this story, I'm a little bit I think there's some wild shit going on in this dude's head. But either way, she'd grown. Yeah, she even says she'd grown up listening to his audiobooks. She later told, them, because he has a really great voice. I know that sounds weird, but he does have a good voice. That is a big part of his appeal. He does a lot of audiobooks, so he's good at that. And when then that same voice that told me those beautiful stories when I was a kid was telling me the story that I was safe and that we were just friends and that he wasn't a threat. At a reading 10 months later, Gaiman suggested that Kendall and 2 other girls wait for him on his tour bus so they can all hang out after he's done signing. When Gaiman showed up, he pulled Kendall into the back of the bus and lay on top of her. He kept saying, "Kiss me like you mean it." She remembers she tried to get into it, but she was panicked. Eventually, Gaiman rolled off of her. "I'm a very wealthy man," she remembers saying, "and I'm used to getting what I want." I guess years later, Gaiman paid this woman $60,000 to pay for therapy. Which, I mean, to be fair, it sounds like nothing really happened. I mean, that's more just shitty douchebag behavior. I mean, I guess that's forcible kissing. Yeah, I guess, and then it says here, he's been having sexual encounters with younger fans for a long time. There was another Kendra that was 18 in 2003. Trying to see if there's anything notable in there. He invited her back to his hotel room, put on a playlist of love songs, and held her down with one hand. He didn't believe in foreplay or lube, Stout tells me, which would make doing stuff particularly painful. She said it hurt too much. He'd tell her the problem was that she wasn't submissive enough. He talked at length about the dominant and submissive relationship he wanted on me, she tells me. Stout had no prior interest in BDSM. She says Gaiman never asked what she liked in bed, and there was no discussion of safe words or aftercare or limits. She'd ask him to call him master and beat her with his belt. These were not sexy little taps, she says. When she told him she didn't like it, she replies, "It's the only way I can get off." Now, I will say, not that you guys really should need to know this. I'm not like a BDS, but I do know, particularly after reading this article, and you hear one of the key things about BDSM, they're always like, informed consent. Their other big thing is consent, making sure everyone's having a good time, and they talk this through beforehand. I mean, that's a big part about this article, too, they do go into. But that's one common through line, is that there was none of this. And if you do think about it, I guess if you were theoretically in a relationship where you're really into BDSM, which I'm not, that would be super important, that you always make sure everyone's happy, and that this is things they're cool with. Because, that's the only thing that really differentiates that between that and abuse. Now, this may be abuse to some extent that you are going along with, but it's still abusive. And it's still not a way you should treat someone. Now, you may be able to, as I've said, from the beginning, this is kind of the consent question here is a little bit up in the air. But at the very least, even abuse, it's like, it's not a good way. It's not a way to act, essentially. At the very least, we should be able to agree that, you shouldn't treat people like this. I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty fair thing to say. You shouldn't treat people like this. All right, Gaiman. Let me see. All right, this is important too. I thought this was interesting because this is a common thing I've found in this circle, especially when it comes to weird sexual stuff. A lot of times, the men, it's like they had some sort of older woman when they were younger who taught them this stuff. Gaiman told Stout he had been introduced to these practices by a woman he'd met in his early 20s who had asked him to whip her pussy. So yeah, this is what gets me off now. Yep. So that's kind of where he said that started from, but he then claimed that he was profoundly unsexual. He did it and ran away, and then he didn't really like it. He said he's very vanilla. This is something he did in an interview back in 2022. So people are connecting this to this. This one is another one. Now this is the same girl from before Stout. So this is another thing that makes it weird, because these are people that he then has ongoing relationships with, which, as I kind of am foreshadowing, we will get to why that is it is a red flag. You see that and you're like, okay, you're telling me there's abuse going on, but you're having this ongoing relationship. You continue to do this, but there will be more that comes in a bit. They're like, oh, maybe there's a little bit more to that. Maybe there's a psychological compelling that's going on to some extent. All right. Back in 2007, this Stout girl went to a trip to the countryside. On the last night there, she developed a UTI that had gone really, really bad. She couldn't sit down. She told him they couldn't fool around, no penetration. She said it was a huge no. She told him, do not put anything in me or I will die, is what she said. Then I guess he then flipped her over the bed and then tried to penetrate her with his fingers. She told him no. He stopped again, and then he did it with his member. At that point, she says she just shut down. She lay in the bed until he was done. And then I guess in October, she filed a police report saying he raped her. Although this was in 2007, which, once again, it does get complicated when you have these ongoing relationships. This one, I will say, is pretty clear. That one's very clear. And her continuing the relationship does not make it not rape, if that makes sense. So I know a lot of people will say what? And as I even say myself, it does imply what's going on here, essentially, if you're continuing the relationship. Continuing the relationship. It makes it harder for me to buy. It makes the abuse allegation a little bit harder to swallow, if that makes sense. But it's still believable. Plenty of people do that. All right, according to the podcast, which quoted Gaiman through his representatives, his position was that sexual degradation, bondage, domination, sadism, and masochism may not be to everyone's taste, but between consenting adults, BDSM is lawful. And this is kind of where they get into in this piece about the kind of idea of eagerly consenting, which they didn't really hear. So, they even said the defining law. This is what defines, separates it between BDSM and abuse. This is one of the girls he abused. This is the claw bathtub. Really beautiful garden. That would be actually a really cool place to take a bath, but really, really creepy place to get diddled by some old fucking author. All right. Now they come back to the thing. I guess after she got, and this says right here, after she got into the bathtub with Pavlovich, that she retreated to the house, to the other girl's house, to Gaiman's wife. She sat in the shower for an hour crying, then got into bed to Palmer's bed, which is Gaiman's wife once again. Began to search the internet for clues. So she Googled Me Too and Neil Gaiman, found nothing. Apparently he hasn't really had many negative stories. So I guess there was some like COVID, story back in 2020. So not much there. But yeah, trying to scroll through here. Now they're just kind of going through her troubles. I'm trying to find the interesting things. Okay, now this is it right here. Now this is one book I haven't read that now I really, really, really want to read because they go quite a bit into this story. The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This is one of Gaiman's books. Apparently, this tells the story of a quiet and bookish 7-year-old boy. Now, this apparently it gets into this story. I believe it was one of his many trysts, or maybe even his wife. I forget that one of them tried to get him to open up about his childhood, and this is kind of his way of doing it. And so if you read this book, this essentially is telling his story. Obviously, I would assume it's weighted in metaphor and symbolism and stuff, but either way, it's still tells the tale of that. So here's one. Over the course of the tale, the boy suffers terribly, sometimes at the hands of his own family. At dinner one night, the boy refuses to eat the food his nanny has prepared. The nanny, the boy knows, isn't really a human, but a nightmare creature from another world. When his father demands to know why he won't eat, the boy explains she's a monster. The father becomes enraged. To punish him, he fills up the tub, picks up the child, plunges him in the water, and pushes his shoulder and heads below the chilly water. So I'd read many books in the bath. The boy says it was one of my safe places, and now I had no doubt I was going to die there. Later that night, on his way out, he glimpses his father having sex with the nanny from the drawing room window, which is weird for a book written from the perspective of a child. But I guess this is supposed to be a personal book about his. He's even said in his interviews how it is a personal book. He said the kid is him. The book is set in Sussex, where Gaiman is from. In the story, the narrator survives otherworldly evil with the help of a family and magical woman. As a child, Gaiman had no such friends to call on. I was going back to 7-year-old me, giving myself a peculiar kind of love that I didn't have. I never feel the past is dead or young Neil isn't around anymore. He's still there hiding in a library somewhere. We're looking for a doorway that will lead him to somewhere safe where everything works. While Gaiman has identified the boy himself, he has also claimed that none of the things that happened to the boy happened to him. Yet there's a reason to think that some of the most horrifying events of the novel did occur. Gaiman has really spoken about the core fact of his childhood. In 1965, when Neil was 5 years old, his parents, David and Sheila, left their jobs as a business executive and a pharmacist and bought a house in East Grinstead, a mile away from what was at that time the worldwide headquarters for the Church of Scientology. Ding, ding, ding. We just got to it, folks. Its founder, the former Scientologist, science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard, lived on the road from them from 1965 until 1967, when he fled the country and began directing the church from international waters, pursued by the CIA, FBI, and a handful of foreign agents and maritime agencies. All right, I'm going to pop in the chat for a second, and we'll come back to this. This is where it's going to be interesting. So, boom, boom, boom. Let's go back to chat. See if anyone has anything interesting, worthwhile to bring up. Does anyone wonder if Israel has dirt on the King of Denmark? Because it feels like the deal the U.S. made with Israel is that they get the Greater Israel Project and we get Greenland as a territory. I don't know. I mean, that would be interesting. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Israel is king on the King of Denmark. It's funny. He said Nephilim Murder Crew says this looked too Jew to read. It's funny. I did kind of point out that it was such Shapiro that wrote it, and I don't know. I think maybe I've scrolled past it already. But little fun fact. This is how I found out today that one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman, is a Jew. So, every time, guys, every time. But yes, he is Jewish. So I think maybe we're going to get into that in a second. Not that it matters. Actually, it has nothing to do with anything, irrelevant to this. It's just, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Really? I was surprised. Yeah, they said if they wrote up fucked up twisted books, you can assume they're fucked up and twisted humans. Yeah, it is a weird thing. Shout out Jeremy Ryan Slade, our resident Scientologist. What? No way. Jeremy's no. I literally just had him on last night. I had Jeremy on last night. I wish I had. That's weird. I wish I had thought about it. There's no way he's a Scientologist. All right, whatever. I'll have to talk to him about that sometime. All right, let me see. Yeah, she's definitely not lying at all. Let me see. Sorry, this is probably boring for people listening to audio. Just a lot of chit chat in here. Yeah, so witches is what they're talking about. Yeah, that is actually in that book. The he is literally raised by a bunch of women. I want to say they are witches. That's kind of like the fantastical nature of it. Arcane Arsenal says, "Wow, he's abused. What a shocker." Old Ron Hubbard working with NASA founder and Gaiman. Yes, Gaiman for sure. All right, yeah, let's get back into this. Yeah, David and Sheila were among England's earliest adherents of Scientology. Now, David and Sheila being Neil Gaiman's parents, they began studying Dianetics in 1956 and eventually took positions in the Guardian's office, a special department organization dedicated to handling the church's growing number of legal cases, public communications, and intelligence operations. The mission of this office, as Hubbard wrote, was its covert use in destroying the repute of individuals and groups. On the side, the Gaimans ran the church's canteen, lodged foreign Scientologists in their home, and opened a vitamin company in town where they supplied courses of supplements for Scientology's detoxification programs, a business that grew exponentially alongside the expansion of the church. By the late 60s, David was the church's public face and chief spokesperson in the UK. So, all right, so back up. Neil Gaiman, one of the most famous authors of our time, comic book and novels, and many of which have been turned into movies, and more which are coming. His parents, his father particularly, was in the 60s was the public face and chief spokesperson of Scientology in the UK. I just had to repeat that. That is an interesting piece of the puzzle here. It was a challenging job, to say the least. The UK, following the example of a handful of other governments, had issued a report declaring Scientology's methods a serious danger to the health of those who submit them. Hubbard would routinely punish members of the organization who committed minor infractions by binding them, blindfolding them, and throwing them overboard into icy waters. Back in England, David gave interviews to the press to smooth over such troubling accounts. The church was under particular pressure to assure the public it was not harming children. In his bulletins to members, Hubbard made it clear that children were not to be exempt from the punishments to which adults were subjected. If a child laughed inappropriately or failed to remember a Scientology term, they could be sent to the ship's hold and made to chip rust for days or confined in a chain locker for weeks at a time without blankets or a bathroom. In his book, Going Clear, Lawrence Wright recounts the story of a 4-year-old boy named Derek Green, an adopted black child who stole a Rolex and dropped it overboard. He was confined to the locker for 2 days and nights. When his mother pleaded with Hubbard to let him out, he reminded her of the Scientology axiom that children are actually adults in small bodies and equally responsible for the behavior. David used Neil, the center of the story, as an exhibit in his case to the public. In 1968, he arranged for Neil to give an interview to the BBC. When the reporter asked the child if Scientology made him a better boy, Neil replied, "Not exactly that, but when you make a release, you feel absolutely great." A release in Scientology lingo is what happens when you complete one of the lower levels of coursework. What was happening away from the cameras is difficult to know, in part because Gaiman has avoided talking about it, changing the subject whenever an interviewer or a friend brings it up. But it seems unlikely that he would have spared the disciplinary measures inflicted on adults and children as a standard practice at that time. According to someone who knew the Gaimans, David and Sheila did apply Scientology methods at home. When Neil was around the age of the child in the ocean at the end of the lane, the person said, David took him to the bathtub, ran a cold bath, and drowned him to the point where Neil was screaming for air. As a teenager, by the way, a lot of this is from the article, but I'm just pulling it straight from there because why not? As a teenager, Neil worked for the Church of Scientology for 3 years as an auditor. So that's kind of the key point I've been getting at I've been kind of implying here. So he worked for Scientology for 3 years as an auditor, a minister of the church who conducts a process some have likened to hypnosis. One former member of the church who worked with Gaiman's parents and was audited by Gaiman recalls him as precocious and ambitious. It was unusual for a teenager to have completed such a high level of training, he tells me. But the Gaimans were like royalty, he says. In 1981, David was promoted to lead the Guardian's office, making him one of the most powerful people in the church, which, once again, the Guardian's office, that's literally their intelligence wing. The intelligence wing of Scientology. So the guy who once again, the author we've been referring to throughout this, his father was essentially, basically, in all, for all, intents and purposes, the number 2 of Scientology, and was running their intelligence division, essentially. And, given that he's running the intelligence, you could almost probably make an argument that maybe he even was the number 1. I mean, given the nature of how intelligence works. So I don't know, just wild stuff. All right. But the same year he fell from grace. So he later then fell. New generation of Scientologists led by David Miscavige, who eventually succeeded Hubbard as the church's leader. So it sounds to me like there was some sort of political shakeup. Miscavige took over for Hubbard. I am assuming that he probably changed some of the higher ups for reasons that make sense. When you taking over a new regime, you're going to want to put more people that are loyal to you in there, as opposed to other past entities. A new journey had Hubbard's ear, and David was calling that Grinder, as his former colleague put it. A document declaring David a suppressive person was released a few years later. It accused him of a range of offenses, including sexual misconduct. David, the document claims, put on a front of being mild-mannered and quite sociable, adding that his actions belie this. His greatest offense, it seemed, was hubris. Gaiman required others to look up to him instead of to source, it reads, referring to Hubbard. So I guess it really is, they said his issue was hubris, so he just got too big, essentially. So kind of what I was implying. In the 80s, David was sent off to a rehabilitation camp. I'm not sure how old Gaiman was there. I'd assume he probably was like an adult at that point, if I had to guess, because he's in his 60s, so that was about 40, 20s, probably. All right. Yeah, it was around that time that Gaiman set out to make a living as a writer. Charming and strategic, he used the contacts he developed as a journalist to break into the business of genre writing, endearing himself to the giants of that world at the time: Douglas Adams, Arthur C. Clarke, Clive Barker, Terry Pratchett, Alan Moore, which someone I mentioned earlier. When I was young, I had unbelievable chutzpah, the kind of monstrous self-certainty that you only get normally in people who then go on to conquer half the civilized world. Now, I will say, that little bit, and then them talking about how he kind of then linked up. He said endearing himself to the giants. Now, I don't know if that means he actually, linked up with these people and was, somehow in their circles almost immediately. But I will say, they said, as I just broke down the math, in the 80s, I would presume he was probably in his 20s around that time. And they said it's around that time he started to make his living as a writer. So he spent his early adulthood and teenage years in Scientology as a auditor, and then he goes out into the world to make his living as an adult. He didn't leave. By the way, I don't believe he actually leave the church, as far as I'm aware, because his later marriage, his wife was a Scientologist. Now, I'm not sure if he does. He was. They didn't mention that in the article. Later in the article, I did catch that his first wife, which was in the 2000s, so still after the 80s, that I believe around the time they left each other or whatever, she was still a Scientologist. So point being, it's not like they said his dad got sent off to rehab camp, essentially became a suppressive person or whatever, subversive or whatever. So they sent off to rehab camp. So you would think a lot of times with some people, like say with Neil, that would then make him go, "Oh, I'm not part of this anymore." Nope, still there. And then he entered into the journalism world. Budding, kind of getting buddy. It sounds like they're saying, with a bunch of huge writers of the time. Kind of glows. Just saying. And anyone who knows, maybe I ought to get like Dana Duda or something on there, because she's done a lot of coverage on Scientology. So, and one of the hypotheses put out by many of the parapolitics heads that talk about Scientology is that they were basically glowies. They were of some sort. So, I mean, and if you think about Neil's dad was head of Intel. Like, he was the Intel guy for Scientology, which is heavily believed by many in our communities to be essentially intelligence community altogether. So wild. It looks like I wouldn't be surprised if there's something more to Neil as well that we don't know about. Just saying. I mean, I could be wrong, completely wrong. I mean, this could have been something he did on behalf of the church as opposed to some other entity. But either way, it seems like the church was likely working on behalf of another entity also. So whether Neil knew about it or not is kind of unknowable. But either way, it is weird that, right off the bat, as someone super high up in this very glowing entity, that he then breaks into the journalism world in his early 20s and butts up against the big dogs pretty much right off the bat, saying he had unbelievable chutzpah. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, he met his wife Palmer in 2008. The first wife he divorced from his first wife. That's where she was the Scientology. Scientology is the first wife. I'm not sure. I don't believe anything about the second wife was. So yeah, theirs kind of start off kind of platonic. They had a weird relationship. They kind of go into that. So far as the, what we're interested in, I don't think there's too much left in here. I just really wanted to show you guys the Scientology side of things. And then, they do make other comments throughout here, kind of weird little, comments about, kind of applying how he acts. The weird thing, I do think there's something to that Dianetics, or the, what is it called? Not Dianetics. What's it called? Is it Dianetics? Whatever. The thing that he would do that was likened to hypnosis. I forget what it's called. What Scientologists do. He was trained in doing that. So I think there's something to that. But I think that's all you guys can go check this out on your own. I'm not going to keep scrolling through this. It mostly just goes through other tales. I mean, I will tell you, like I said, the ones I did read to you actually were the more vanilla ones. There were other stories where he essentially made women drink pee and like all sorts of crazy stuff, and it was all stuff that essentially, except for the one I told you, which was pretty blatantly just straight up rape, assuming the woman's telling the truth. They were all kind of in this gray area where it's like debatable whether they consented or not, but he just so this is kind of what I'm getting at with the idea of like, maybe there's something to go to them. Maybe there's something more to that. So yeah. All right, let's check in the chat, see what you guys have to say. Oh, I had that chat up the entire time. My bad. What do we have here? Google Maps? You're showing me... What are you showing me here? North side, buddy. I'm assuming Church of Spiritual Technology. You're showing me Scientology. You're showing me a lot of fucking links. You gotta at least tell me what these links are. Oh, that's... These the guys that own the intellectual property of Scientology. Okay, well, let's look at, fuck it. Let's pop over there, see what this is. Let's look at that. Let's show this. Church of Spiritual Technology. Okay, well, this is interesting. Let's look at this together. All right, this is what one of you guys shared. Church of Spiritual Technology. Here we go. It's a California 501c3 non-profit corporation incorporated in 1982, which owns all the copyrights of the estate of L. Ron Hubbard and licenses their use. CST does business as L. Ron Hubbard Library. The Church of Spiritual Technology refers to Hubbard as a focus point with a structure designed to realize what scientists understand to be his vision. The stated purpose of the archive in CST, according to the church, is so that future generations will have available to them all of L. Ron Hubbard's technology in its exact and original form, no matter what happens to society. Okay, well, that's interesting. I don't really know what to make of that. If there's anything to be said there that they... I mean, I don't know if there's anything really sinister or anything interesting. I mean, maybe if I dug into it, there might be some more there. But I guess, yeah, that's something. That sure is something. What else did you have in there? You also had a YouTube thing for me. Jeremy, Scientology. Oh, somebody shared me a Jeremy Slate Scientology thing. Oh, shit. Fucking, is Jeremy a Scientologist? Man, I'm going to have to hit him up because, yeah, if so, I definitely need to talk to him about that. All right. Sorry, I was talking about that while you guys didn't see the tabs. You're probably like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? All right, let's pop back in the chat. Yep, these are the guys. Ban hammer time. Oh, so not spam links. No, not spam. My link is a talk Jay arrested 7 months ago. Okay. Hey, Jose, did you ever do a deep dive on Scientology? There's a lot of crazy shit. Like, they have their own CQB, counter-terrorist and sniper teams on their big properties. They have Sea Org. And there's all this missing people, especially the wife of the current leader, hasn't been seen since 2007, if I remember correctly, and the fact they have people infiltrating police groups. You know what? Maybe I may have to get Dana Duda or somebody on there, unless somebody else is better covering Scientology, because Yeah, I think she would be a good guest for that for sure. So let me see what else we got. Let's go to this. This is from Ken Silva, Washington Post cartoonist arrested for possessing CP. Now this is interesting because it goes into AI. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office announced Thursday that prominent Washington Post cartoonist Darren Bell has been arrested for possessing CP. According to a press release, the Sacramento Valley Internet Crimes Against Children detective stated investigating Bell after receiving a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The tip was reportedly related to 18 files of CP with 134 videos linked to an account owned by the 49-year-old Bell. Detectives served a warrant on Bell's home Wednesday, recovering evidence related to the initial tip, as well as computer-generated /AI CP. Here's one of Darren Bell's cartoons accusing Donald Trump of being a pervert. Whatever. Okay. And then Bell was arrested and is being held on $1 million. His initial court appearance set for Friday. They know this is the first case involving a charge of AI CP. Bell is a well-known cartoonist, having been featured in several prominent publications. The office added his booking photo is not available for public release per Cali law. The Washington Post hasn't commented on the matter of the publication of this article. Online pundits quickly noted the irony of Bell's arrest, giving his previous work depicting Donald Trump as a deviant. And the charge against Bell comes after 8 months after the Justice Department filed the first case in the country. According to the DOJ, Stephen Andernig, 42 of Holman, used a text-to-image generative AI or Gen AI model called Stable Diffusion to create thousands of realistic images of prepubescent minors. In that case, his attorney is disputing that some of the AI images found in this computer actually constituted CP. Since no children were used to abuse such images, the DOJ should have been held to a higher standard to be able to obtain a search warrant against Holman in the first place, his lawyer argued in November brief. The case is not about CP. The rules and analysis for those cases don't apply here. It's all about obscenity in the First Amendment. It's a much, much different framework. We don't even have a sex act being displayed. We have nudity, which is not obscene and often not even enough to find that the image is CP. Here, there's nothing about the images that would make them into remotely, patently offensive, hardcore porn. Is it porn? Maybe, probably, sure, but it doesn't matter because the question is the image patently offensive, hardcore pornography? Certainly not. Those descriptions just don't cut it. All right, well, I just thought it'd be interesting to let you guys know, like, this is what the world's coming to. We've got AI. I thought this was the first one when I read it, but apparently no, this is the second one. So there was another one in, where was this at? I don't even think it said where it was at. But yes, the Justice Department has already done this once. But this is where we're at in the world where now they're doing that. We have AI CP. Now, I don't know what to make of that. I mean, should it be illegal? Should it not? I mean, I'm fine with it being illegal because, fuck those people. But it is kind of weird because there's technically not really a person there. No one was technically hurt. I don't know. It's a bizarre world we're in now. We're in this post-reality world, which is creepy. Creepy. For sure. All right, let's chop it back, check back in with you guys. Bobo says, believe it or not, Cell Park, when they did their Scientology episode, didn't make anything up. That was almost a mini documentary. Yeah, many such cases. That's what they did with Mormonism as well. So wild. Man, I'm still reeling over the fact that Jeremy Slate is you guys are saying he's Scientologist. I literally had him on last night. That is wild. That is bizarre. Man, all right, that's something, huh? All right, well, let's what else do we got? One more. All right, this is probably, I think, where we're going to finish off with today. I'm going to cover this before I forget about it. And by the way, there was some stuff you guys tagged me. I just want to let you guys know out there that have been tagging me and stuff. I haven't played them in past couple days, that's how it worked. I just had other stuff I want to cover. But I still have them saved. I was going to cover them today, but then the Gaiman coverage took a little bit longer than I thought. But I have a couple things that you guys have tagged me in, and we will cover them. Probably tomorrow. I believe me and Austin will probably be doing an episode together tomorrow, so pop in for that. But anyways, this is one I meant to cover, on the last one, but I think the Israel stuff kind of got in the way. Which is fine. This is one, recently we covered the Order. We read like an Order piece and kind of talked about them a little bit and listened to or read some of Richard's thoughts on it. But this is part of the reason why I even wanted in the first place, because for one, there was obviously the movie coming out, but then two, we also had new information that came out from Ken And I needed to kind of like lead that up with letting you guys know what the fuck the order is in the first place before we went a little bit deeper down the line of going into it. So here we go. Scoop: white nationalist leader received cash from Nazi bank robberies, FBI records say. And this is from Ken again. Both of these articles were Ken. He's the fucking man. Tom Metzger was one of the most prominent American white nationalists in the 20th century, founding a group called the White Aryan Resistance and battling with the SPLC in high-profile court cases. According to newly released FBI records, Metzger might also have been a member of the Order, a neo-Nazi bank robbery gang that stole over $2.5 million from 1983 to 84. The Order is receiving newfound media attention thanks to a new film about the group featuring actors such as Jude Law, Mark Maron, and Journey Smollett. Sorry. According to FBI records released last Tuesday, a bureau interviewed one of its confidential informants in December 1984 and stated that Metzger has been identified in the Aryan Nation's domestic terrorism case as a member of the Order. It is not clear who the FBI informant might have been, though at that time, one of the Order's members, Tom Martinez, had already flipped and turned state's witness. Another FBI memo dated June 1985 stated that Metzger may have received some $200,000 from the Order's bank heist. The June 1985 memo was about an investigation into allegations that Metzger's group WAR plastered neo-Nazi posters on Jewish schools in San Francisco. WAR is described as an umbrella group in the San Francisco Bay Area, which combined the activities of the Ku Klux Klan and other right-wing extremists, which, if I remember correctly, I believe WAR was the one Dennis Mahon was kind of running, or at least part of. And that leads into Carol Howe and Elohim City and all that. That's kind of, I believe, where she kind of got her entrance, was interacting with them in WAR or whatever. All right. The purported leader of WAR is Tom Metzger, the unknown member of the Order, codenamed Radio, who is believed to have received $200,000 in robbery loot from other Order members. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe it's not WAR. Maybe I don't want to. You know what? Take that back. Don't quote me on that. I might have got that wrong. I think I might be mixing up that with something else. Anyways, the final recently recently released FBI memo that talks about Metzger and the Order is from June 1986. It stated that the Order's leader, Bob Matthews, gave Metzger at least $100,000. That memo also stated that Metzger provided radio equipment to the Order. That memo also indicates there were multiple informants spying on Metzger's group. Metzger, who died in 2020, was never charged in relation to the Order's robberies. Nevertheless, the allegations in the new FBI docs are supported by public sources, including the definitive book on the Order, The Silent Brotherhood. That book states that Matthews listed WAR as one of the intended recipients of his robberies, though it doesn't say how much he gave. The book also contradicts FBI records by identifying Metzger's code name as Bear, not Radio. The FBI records also add to a remarkable story that attorney Kirk Lyons, who represented one of the Order's members, told his publication last year. According to Lyons, Metzger used some of the Order's proceeds to help free the wife of his client, then KKK leader Louis Beam, who had been imprisoned in Mexico. Which that's a fun story to dig into, which I guess that's what we're saying. It's been a thing for a while where people have wondered where the fuck that money came from. That has been a story in the racist, dissident, right, or whatever you want to call it. That group, that group that at one point, yes, Louis Beam needed to get his wife out of a prison in Mexico, and essentially some money out of nowhere from Kirk Lyons, who is kind of like a well-known lawyer. He's tied in with a lot of the Elohim City guys. He represented a lot of them in a lot of different ways. Strassmeyer. Then Kirk Lyons shows up with a bunch of money all of a sudden. So that's been a question for a while. Where the fuck did that come from? And it seems like this money may have, in a roundabout way, came from the Order that we referred to earlier through Metzger. The lawyer's story comes from his friend and former colleague David Holloway, another crazy glowy. This is the guy who essentially helped Strassmeyer get out of the country. He's also the first guy that Strassmeyer went to live. No, wait, it was Petruski then Holloway. So he was the second guy that he went to be with. Who got him clicked up in his... Anyways, dude glows. A pilot who worked for a CIA front company in the 1980s reportedly claimed infinite knowledge of the Oklahoma City bombing in the 90s and bizarrely currently works as a contractor for NASA. This is a guy who was like literally basically a Nazi, essentially. Like he was rolling with these Nazi people. Like, I'm not talking like, I'm not saying that to be, to be, I don't know, edgy. No, like he just was. I mean, so it's wild. And now he works for NASA. Lyons said he sent Holloway to retrieve Beam's wife, Sheila, from Mexican prison. Lyons said Mexican law enforcement had raided Beam's home because the FBI told them he was a drug lord. However, only Sheila was inside. She thought she was being robbed and shot at one of the Mexican agents, Lyons said. They sent their Mexican agent who spoke English to get her out. He just said, "Get down here." She found the pistol she was trained to use. He was coming upstairs with a shotgun. She wouldn't comply because she didn't know who this guy was, opened fire and put 2 rounds in him and took out half of his liver. In response, the Yaqui Indians with machine guns outside opened fire, spraying some 500 rounds in the Beam residence, according to Lyons. It was after the gunfire stopped that Sheila's troubles began, the lawyer lamented. Many bad things happened to her. I think she was tortured and worse, he said, declining to go into gruesome details. That all happened with the FBI in the next room. The FBI didn't lift a finger, because if she's in Mexican prison, that's pressure they can put on Lewis, who was on a short trip to the U.S. Lyons said his initial understanding is that Mexican authorities were furious that the FBI misled them that Beam was a drug lord, apparently releasing Sheila because they didn't want to deal with her. A Mexican judge ruled that she acted in self-defense. However, Lyons said FBI agent Norm Stevenson later told him that Metzger bribed Mexican authorities with proceeds of the order's multi-million-dollar armed car robbery. Take it with a grain of salt, but Stevenson told me that Tom Metzger put up the money to get her out. Money from the order. That's what Norm Stevenson said. I didn't believe it, but that's what he told me, Lyons told the headline USA. I told him it's still a miracle. We thought we'd never get out of there. That's what brought me back to the Lord. Headline USA shared the newly released FBI records with Lyons last week, and he said they confirmed what he was told. So Lyons, sounds like how Lyons is confirming it. Okay. FBI agent Norm Stevenson told me that after the sedition trial, when he was returning Beam seized property, Lyons said last week in an email, it made sense to me, save that they never picked Metzger up on that, if they believed it. In any event, Metzger would be tied to an even deadlier domestic terrorist event a decade later, the April 19th, 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. As Headline USA has reported, FBI whistleblowers and independent investigations have found that Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh had help from a group of white nationalists that lived in an Oklahoma compound called Elohim City. An undercover ATF informer warned her handlers in early 1995 that Elohim City residents were casing federal buildings and planning attack, but she was ignored. According to investigator Roger Charles' book, Oklahoma City, What the Investigative Mission and What It Matters, Metzger may have also been at Elohim City during the plotting of the Oklahoma City bombing. Why would McVeigh have been at Elohim City? He received a traffic ticket just over the Arkansas state line in the fall of '93. Spent the night in a nearby hotel on September 12, 1994. Those have to be strong possibilities, Charles wrote before turning to Metzger. Another intriguing date is November 1st, 1994, when Tom Metzger, one of the godfathers of the radical right, paid a visit to Elohim City with Dennis Mahon. Oh, maybe I was right about the war thing earlier. It is tempting to think that McVeigh would have been there to take lessons from the master, and it was not far out of his way. He was driving from Kansas to upstate New York at the time. So this kind of fills in the blanks on like kind of a question within the old right that's been around for a long time of how the fuck did that happen. And it seems that I don't know, this kind of glows a little bit, obviously, because now this guy was someone who clearly seemed to be connected with the order, and for some reason they never decided to go into it, which is weird. That didn't come out till recently. This guy is also one of the was the leader of war. I mean, so he's kind of this big character in the racist right. Though I'm not saying this glows like super hard. I'm not saying for sure this dude is some sort of asset of some sort. I'm just saying it looks weird. It's very odd. And so looking at from outside looking in, it makes you wonder. I feel like there's more things to find out here and more questions to be had, and maybe more will come of this later. But it is interesting that these little details are being filled in because this actually has been one of those questions that we've been asking for a while. Where did that money come from? And it looks like it came from the order through Metzger. And Metzger was likely a member of the order, and he was one of the major right-wing, racist, leaders of that era. So I don't know, kind of interesting. We always seem to find out decades later that A lot of these big dogs end up being feds of some flavor or some sort. So maybe that's the case here, maybe not. I mean, maybe just legit, but it feels glowy. I'll say that. But all right, let's check in the chat and we'll get on the fuck out of here. All right, yeah, probably talking about what did the AI base the picks on? Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know. Everyone's saying hi. White racialist really should take a page of the Mormon Amish book instead of going the drugs, guns, and robbery mode. Yes, you're 100% correct. All right, the Amish, and then JC says, what's the Amish playbook? Well, the Amish playbook's just fucking do your shit, work, stick together, don't cause any problems elsewhere, no violence, blah, 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 none of that crap. That's the way to go. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get out of here for today. I do want to remind you guys, if you do want to support what I'm doing over here, you can do that over at patreon.com/nowayjose2020. At the highest level, or the lowest level is $2. That gives you the early access to the episodes. I just had on Jeremy Slate last night. So if you, and then it's going to be dropping here in like a half hour, my episode from last week. Those are both ones you'd already have if you're a patron. I also have on Thursday, I'll be doing my first Vegas shooting episode. I never covered that. So with a Vegas shooting researcher. So that'll be interesting. So if you're a patron, you'll have access to that early. But if not, you'll have to wait like a poor with the rest of them. So wait a week. But also at the $2 level, you can be a talking head on Already Dead alongside me and Austin for the call-in portion of the show. And I also have an ad-free RSS feed now over on Patreon. So there's a link that you can get there that you can put in your podcatcher, and you have an ad-free RSS feed. If for whatever reason that doesn't work, I also have a collection on Patreon that will provide you all of my, since I started doing this, all of the MP3 versions, the audio versions without ads. So yeah, I highly recommend that. If you do, the highest level is my sponsors, and I read them off every episode of my co-host on Tarragang, at Tarragang Toad, also have at Abrogate D's, also have at ZOVERACK, at _ Infinite Zeal, then Jacob Daniel of the Biblical Anarchy podcast. You have Tim Tuttle at Jolly on Klebold, then Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine, then big fan of the show Torrin May, and then at INWARD Lover, at Inward Lover, because we all should learn to look inward and love ourselves, and we should all be inward lovers. Make sure to hit like, share, or make sure to hit that like button, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I mean, that stuff really helps out a lot, boosts up in the algos. I mean, go leave a 5-star review if you're listening on audio. Helps out a lot. Support what me and Austin are trying to do out here. Trying to get some shekels up on this bitch. Help us out. Give us some likes, dog. Takes no time from you. Throw us some likes. Appreciate all of you for showing up here. I got Tyler saying happy Friday to you. Yeah, so can't wait for the notable Las Vegas, as Ivan the troll calls it, says Bo Makua. But yeah, with that, guys, let's go ahead and get out of here. I appreciate everyone showing up. Hit that like button. Give me a 5-star review. All that good stuff. All right.